not only put where you're from, if you could put the state where you're from, and if you could put the grade that you teach, that would be really great. The grade that you teach. The grade that you teach. Trying to go live on my other page. Okay. Waiting for everyone to come in. Thank you all for joining. Hi, Kay. Hi, Cheryl. Good to see you. Roberta, good to see you. Just waiting to get everybody on here. I am streaming from both pages again tonight. So just want to try to remind you, if you're following my personal page, Cathy Owens-Oliver, I would like to invite you to follow my business page, DrCathyO, as well. So thank you all for joining. Hi, Veronica. Thank you for joining. And as you're joining in, if you would just post where, hi Tasha, good to see you. If you would just post the state where you're from and the grade that you're associated with. I'm saying associated with because you may not be a teacher, you may not be a, a parapro or education professional. So if you would just post where you are joining from, post where you are joining from. And your school, or not, you don't have to post your school, but your grade level. Thanks for joining. So if you're an educator, if you would just post the grade level, the state where you live, and the grade level you're associated with. I'm saying that because you may not be a teacher, you may be a parent, a grandparent, a paraprofessional, a guidance counselor, a public citizen who's concerned about kids. So if you would just post the grade level you're associated with, maybe it's your niece, your nephew, your grandchild, they're in 3rd grade, they're in 8th grade. If you would post that, that would be very helpful. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. Welcome to the Teacher's Lounge. I'm Dr. Cathy Owens-Oliver, and I've been offering this free support session on Tuesdays and Thursday nights at 9 p.m. on Facebook Live. If you know someone who is not on Facebook and would like to join, that's fine. You can send them to my YouTube page, and they can go back and watch all the videos that we've discussed on my YouTube page. And you can follow me at DrCathyO on all social media. I will eventually share these videos in a lot of different ways, but right now I just choose to do them on Facebook Live. That's where I have a following, and I'm involved in a lot of teacher groups and other education consortiums through Facebook. So that's why I use this particular platform. But it's Facebook Live, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. For those who are joining me for the first time, welcome to the Teacher's Lounge. It's an opportunity for me to provide support, encouragement, inspiration, and motivation to teachers and other educators and parents as well, who have suddenly found themselves in this national classroom without walls. I certainly pray for your health and safety during this pandemic, and I think that it's really important for us as educators to just band together, buddy up, share ideas, give each other feedback, constructive criticism, and just help in how to survive in this online environment. I've been teaching online for the last several years as adjunct faculty, and so I work with quite a few teachers or college students who plan to be teachers. So I enjoy doing that work. So I'm very familiar with the online environment, and I'm willing to help you in any way that I can. You all may be using Zoom, Google Classroom, Canvas, Blackboard, WebEx, TK20, all of these different platforms I'm very familiar with. Skype, I would be happy to help you and give you feedback. If you need to reach me directly, you can email me at info@drcathyo.com, info@drcathyo.com. If there are specific topics that you would like to see me address during these weekly meetings, then write to me. I have 5 tonight where people have been writing to me, asking me to address specific things. And then you can also post your questions in the chat box at the end. Good to see you tonight, Liz, all the way from Michigan, 5th grade teacher. Claire, good to see you. Lasagna, good to see you. So I have had the opportunity to work with so many educators all over the country in my work since I was a high school English teacher, I've worked with several national organizations, including the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. So a shout out to all the NBCTs out there, all the National Board Certified Teachers. That is probably the best job I have ever had. But in that work, I traveled around the country training other teachers and promoting teacher leadership in a school-based environment. So I had an opportunity to work in 46 of 50 states. I'm down to Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, and Alaska now. So if I could get those 4, then I'll have all 50 states checked off of my bucket list. If you're joining me for those states, I definitely want to come and observe your classroom and work with you and help you in your school do whatever it is that you're trying to do to improve your school from the inside out. So again, thank you everybody tonight for joining. We've had several really rich classroom conversations during these In the Teacher's Lounge sessions. The first one was don't sweat the software. Don't sweat the software. And I just shared a lot of feedback on how in an environment like this, it's so easy to get hung up on the software and all the different features and functions. And it can be intimidating in a lot of different ways. So we talked about how to not sweat the software, learn the basics, and teach your heart out. One of the other sessions was on understanding a different world, recognizing where your students live and how they live and how much it's a different world from your classroom, because now your classroom has become a screen stage, not even their homes, and they're joining your cyber classroom from their homes. So we talked about that. We also talked about AAA applying assessment alternatives. If you missed any of these, you can go back and watch them on YouTube. And then the last one was everybody gets a gift. G meaning make every student feel good. I make sure that every student on the screen is included. F, make sure that your students feel favored by you. And then T, they have to be teachable. They have to know that they're teachable. You have to know that they're teachable, and you have to ensure that they are learning something in this online space with you. So our topic for tonight then is real world learning culture. Real world learning culture. I shaped this topic around a lot of the feedback that I have received from those of you whom I know and have been watching and sharing your thoughts and reactions. And I also crafted this message in order to respond to some of the questions and comments that I've been receiving from those of you who've written to me by email saying, will you address this? And will you address this topic? So I tried to roll all of that into tonight. So let's think a minute about this whole idea of real world learning culture. Culture is not limited to ethnicity. That's lesson number 1. I think most teachers out there know that. Culture is a way of being. It's everything that shapes who you are and who you are becoming. Everything from family values, family dynamics, family issues, political beliefs, what you believe about health and policy and politics and finance, relationships that you have and what those relationships look like in your family, even if it's not a normal family structure, education, how you've been educated, the things that you're interested in, everything that has an impact on your evolvement as a person shapes your culture, your religious beliefs and backgrounds, the neighborhood that you live in, the friends that you connect with or choose not to be connected to. All of that shapes your culture. Classrooms take on a culture. Churches take on a culture. Schools take on a certain culture. Governments take on a culture. State level, local level, take on cultures different from the national level. So it's really important for us to understand this in the classroom because we are living far beyond what a lot of stereotypes used to be. So we can't make assumptions about what people think and how they feel about various things if we don't know what their values are and if we don't know what to do when there seems to be a lack thereof. So real world learning culture, and that requires that you as teachers must understand and value 3 things: relevance, relatability, and rapport. We as educators, even in this online environment, have to understand and be committed to relevance, relatability, and rapport. So I talked to one of my friends who's a school leader, and he said to me, I tell you one thing, I don't care if we're online or not. I'm making sure that all of my staff are on curriculum, that they're on target, and I have my assistant principals helping me to check into every classroom every day. And I'm making sure that my teachers are covering the curriculum and sticking to the content. And I do value that. Trust me, I have 25 plus years in the education space. I understand curriculum. I understand standards of learning. I understand the standard course of study, learning objectives, outcomes, data-driven decision making. But we are working as educators in an environment now that requires three really important things with every single child that shows up on the classroom screen stage. And those three things are relevance. How are the topics that we are sharing and teaching relevant to their real world experience? The second one is relatability. How can you, as the instructor on the screen stage in this classroom without walls, show that you can relate to what students are thinking and feeling and what's happening in their families and what's going on in their little heads or big heads for some of them? And the third one is rapport. It is so important that you build a relationship with your students, and in some cases, it's going to be a new one in this online environment. Some of my friends have said to me, I have a handful of students that I don't know. I knew them in August when school started last year, and I thought I knew them throughout the semester, but I got a handful right now. I don't know who they are, because now they're in a different learning environment, and that different environment has its own culture. When children come into our school building, they're required to take on the culture, the climate, the expectations of that school, and that's true for our classrooms as well. But we're not in our classrooms anymore, so we have to build a rapport, a relationship, some level of relatability and relevance now in ways we may not have done before. A lot of that is done through telling stories, you sharing yours and allowing them to share theirs. I respect what my friend, the principal, said about wanting students to still be on grade level. While I respect what he said, and he's probably watching tonight, I regret to inform you, they will not be on grade level. That's the part you have to understand. They will not be on grade level. At the end of this series, I'll be talking about what gap closers need to know and be able to do. There will be significant learning gaps now and over the summer. So it's really important then that our focus is not just on whether or not they are covering the curriculum per se. I think teachers can teach to learning objectives and outcomes in very creative ways that may be vastly different from how they've normally been doing it in the classroom. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight. When you think about culturally responsive pedagogy, and remember, I'm connecting this to several of the comments that were written to me since we met the last time. Culturally responsive teaching means that you are responsive, not reactive. There's a difference. Responsive to the culture of your student's learning environment or family environment. How are you being responsive to their culture, their way of life, their way of being? How are you connecting lessons, learning outcomes to their particular culture, their way of being, whatever that is, how things are done in their new learning environment that you're joining, and how you're going to acclimate them to the expectations you have in this online classroom without walls. You have to think about that. Now, some of you are 2 weeks in, a week in of the online environment. You're just a week in. But then there are others, you've been at this for 3 weeks, some people almost a month now. By now, for sure, you have a really good understanding of who they are at home, what kind of learner they are at home, what kind of learning support they have at home, and the lack thereof. And so you have to take that into consideration when you're teaching and planning lessons. Let me just say this, and I don't mean to sound facetious, but this is a focus on real world learning culture, so I have to keep it real with you. Cute curriculum is not going to cut it. I'm just sorry. I'm sorry, superintendent. I'm sorry, school leader, principal of the year and teacher of the year, grade level chairperson, department department chair, I regret to inform you that cute curriculum is not going to cut it. And what I mean by that is teachers have shared with me, oh, it's real cute. It's real cute that I have all these learning objectives that I'm supposed to cover. I'm still trying to get them to log in on time and stay engaged. I'm still trying to get parents to set up an environment where they're not distracted. So you can't just teach curriculum. And I call that the spray and pray method. That's what, when I work with teachers all the time, I tell them you have to guard against the spray and pray method. What I mean by that is we have our curriculum and our lesson plans and we just put it out there. And at the end of a lesson or at the end of the day, we feel good because we covered it. That's not teaching. It's not about whether or not you covered the material. It's about whether or not the students learned the material. And so if we focus solely on just covering the curriculum or getting through that lesson plan, oh, they'll get through it and they may have done some things, but they may not necessarily have learned some things. I tell my students all the time, my student teachers, my students who want to be teachers, it is not about what you have students doing. It is about what you have students learning. And earlier in this series, I talked to parents about asking your children questions about what they learned at school, not what they did at school. So if children, I don't care the age group, 3 years old, 13, 23, if they cannot articulate to you what they've learned or something about what they've learned, then you just covered a cute curriculum, but they did not master any learning. They were doing some things that you called learning activities, but they weren't necessarily learning things. So I'm trying to challenge you, and I'm challenging school leaders and supervisors to push past this need to mandate that teachers stick to the curriculum. You have to give teachers the flexibility, the autonomy, the room for growth to articulate material concepts and themes and content in ways that make them and the lessons relevant to students, relatable to their experience, as well as, I have to say, realistic, so that you can build a rapport with them. One of my things that I treasure as a descriptor of who I was as a teacher is that my students would say, and I taught high school 9th and 11th grade. I loved 9th graders. I call it high school kindergarten because they're too old for middle school and too young for high school. So they're the misfit group. And I loved teaching 9th graders. But they would say that they had a love-hate relationship with me. They would say, I love you, Miss O, but I hate all the work you make me do. But I made sure that the work was relevant to their interests, their grade level, their learning styles, and the culture of learning that surrounded them, not only in my school or my classroom, but in their homes, which of course, you know, I had to get to know them and get to know something about their homes to find that out. Listen, just talk to your students, find out the things that they like, that they don't like, that they're interested in. Ask them, I call these, conversation starters. So when you get online with your students tomorrow, don't say, all right, everyone, I've posted the learning objective in the chat box. I want you to write that at the top of your paper, or these were the assignments from yesterday, so here's where you're supposed to be today. Listen, gone is the time for that kind of environment. Your students are watching TV. I mean, I know that you're teaching, but in their online technology experience, they're watching TV. They log into computers and iPads and tablets to watch Netflix and cartoons and whatever they're watching online. So when you're online, you're just another person. You're just another show that they're watching on TV. You have to make it meaningful. You have to make it engaging. I like to watch This Is Us. I like to watch American Idol. I like to watch Hometown and every previous syndicated episode of Fixer Upper. These are just some of the shows that I like to watch. I can watch them on my phone. I can watch them on my Mac. I can watch them on my smart television. You can do the same. So understand that in your students' learning culture, even from an online perspective, when they come to class on screen, they're ready for the show and you have to perform. Yes, I mean that. You have to perform. Performance as an educator is required by all of us. That's what holds students' attention. So get some kind of conversation starter that gets them engaged with you on the screen first before you just dive into a lesson or your review of what happened yesterday. Another one of my friends is a principal, and she said that she had this rigorous schedule throughout the day when this online environment first started. And she said one of the teachers, second or third grade, whatever it was, just did a panoramic quick video of her house. And she showed herself at the kitchen table with her monitor and screen and all of her lesson plans and material spread out. And then across the room was her child at the coffee table working on her tablet with her teacher. And then across the room was her 2-year-old in a playpen environment, screaming to the top of his lungs. And so she did this panoramic video, and she sent it to my friend, the principal, and she said, I just can't. So just like you have all these dynamics going on in your own home and in your head and heart, so is the case with your students. And so we have to make sure that we take all of that into consideration. What are we talking about tonight? For any of you who are just joining, real world learning culture. Listen to me carefully. If you are a parent, a grandparent, the aunt, the uncle, the big brother, the sister-in-law, whatever relationship you have, the stepdad, the stepmom, the foster parent, whatever, you have a responsibility to help ensure that education is still taking place in this online environment. So please use some of these tips. One of my best friends called me this week. She's a grandmother, and her daughter and granddaughter are staying in their house during this time with her and her husband. And she said that she watched one of the episodes, and she was watching just to support me and see what I was up to. But when she heard me say, parents, please, teachers are begging me to tell you, create a quiet space for the children to learn, uninterrupted time for them to be online. She said it dawned on her that she and her daughter, who are quote unquote working from home, were having a full-on blown conversation with the television going while the child was 10 feet away, sitting at the kitchen table, trying to do her work and focus online. So these chats are for everybody. Yes, we're in the teacher's lounge, but maybe for the first time in my education career, I'm inviting everybody into the teacher's lounge. And I'm speaking on behalf of teachers, on behalf of principals and school leaders, on behalf of parents, but on behalf of the kids. And so tonight's topic, kids want you to have a real world focus, a real world learning culture. One of the questions I received that prompted me to share this topic tonight was from a theater teacher, drama appreciation, theater and arts. And the person said to me, would you please include the arts in your presentations? Because it's very difficult teaching some of those topics. And when he said that, I also thought about health and physical education. I know of a friend who's a PE and health teacher, and he has his students keeping exercise journals every day of what they're doing to get exercise. He has them doing a scientific experiment to follow and track the exercise of other family members in the house, how much TV time, how much sitting down, laying around, sleeping time, how many steps are they getting in, all of those kinds of things. So my friend who's the drama teacher said, this is a very difficult time for me because I try to expose my students to high level performance, high quality performance in the arts, classical theater and opera and Broadway and that kind of thing. And I'm so concerned that while they're home, they'll be watching Netflix and other things on television and movies that are, subpar, nothing like theater, what I'm teaching them in class. And I wrote back and I said, you know what? What they're doing at home right now is your class. So while you would like to expose them to so much more of the classics, challenge them by getting them to watch some of that and research some of that, but you have to connect your teaching to what they're really doing at home. So you may have to connect theater and music to This Is Us if that's what students are watching right now, or you may have to connect it to whatever. And I'm not good at the elementary grades per se in terms of their palette for television, but you are as the teacher, and so you have to connect your focus, your content area to their real world lived experience. And this is another thing. Lived experiences is like new terminology in this culturally responsive teaching environment, meaning really you have to know something about their lives and their family, and you have to be strategic enough to connect that to learning in the classroom. So you heard me say already, gone are the days of you just covering the curriculum. You need to figure out, what are they watching? What are they listening to? What music do they like? What things do they like to eat? What activities are going on in their homes? Do they play games in their homes? Are they doing puzzles? Are they getting outside? Do they have a bike? Do they exercise? Is someone sick? Has someone died? Are they worried about family members? Are they missing their grandparents? You have to do whatever you have to do to find out what's going on with them, so that the content you teach will be connected to who they are. Why? Because it is less about what you have them doing and more about what you have them learning. And think about yourself. I would like to think about myself. I learn more and I learn better when the content is connected to my personal life. My pastor preached a message last Sunday called Behind Closed Doors. And of course, he connected it to the tomb of Jesus, but then he wrapped it around to this whole COVID experience and the stay-at-home concept, and how are we living and how are we behaving and how are we getting along behind closed doors. Then he moved that message from our individual family to our broader community. And he began to explain that every day he takes a walk and he's meeting neighbors that he should have met a long time ago. They've been his neighbors a long time, but he's been behind closed doors, closed up, shut up in his own home, and hadn't been as neighborly as he would want to be. He talks about how he's cooking more because he can't eat out all the time, and he's eating healthier because behind closed doors, he's having to cook for himself. I just use that as an example for you of how he, even as a pastor, connected his personal experience to my lived experience. And so that's what you have to do for your students. Connect what you're doing in the classroom to their lived experiences. Okay? So the focus tonight, again, real world learning culture. The learning has changed now to their real world, not your real world, not the schools, not the districts, and not what you have in your lesson plan or standard course of study, which you do still have to cover, but you have to connect it to what their real life and their lived experiences are like in their own homes. Okay, so let me get to the questions that were written to me. And if you have a question tonight, thank you so much for your feedback. If you have questions tonight, just write it in the chat box and I will respond to those. I have about 5 questions written here before we end for tonight, but I want to respond to something I see in the chat box right now from someone in Dallas. I love Dallas and I miss La Madeleine's tomato soup, but that I digress. So someone from Dallas wrote, I have a college freshman. Any information is helpful. Okay, well, it depends. If your child is a freshman in college now, you're a teenager, and they have come home because schools have been closed, the psychosocial emotional impact on a teen at this time is extremely difficult. I would say from the K-12, or I should say P-14, preschool to the 14th year, senior in college, I feel that those who are more impacted now than most are college freshmen who didn't complete their freshman year and came home early. Those of you who are parents and educators have to think about what it was like for you at 18 when you went to college, and what your expectations are, what it was supposed to be, what it meant for you, and now all of a sudden it's just shut down, and your experience is different now from everyone else who had a freshman year. So for those of you who are parents saying any information that I have, you have to make sure, this is going to be the hard part, parents, in this stay-at-home environment. You have to make sure that they have some kind of outlet with their friends. I'm serious. You're not going to like this. You're thinking, do you have a teenager, Dr. O? Listen to me carefully. They have to have some kind of outlet with their friends, and not just online and not just by phone. I think I shared with you in another Teacher's Lounge experience that I have a friend who lets his daughter drive to one of her favorite restaurants to get takeout once a week. He lets her just go by herself to have that time. And now she has a couple of other friends who go as well, and they meet in the parking lot and yell out the window at each other. But you just have to be very sensitive to what this experience is, and whatever you can create at home or plan for a year from now or next summer to kind of make this up to them. That is really, really so important. All right, so next question. I talked to you already about the question I got from the theater teacher. I got a question from or comment from someone in Pennsylvania who said, my district is giving one computer per household for only third grade and up. How do we manage in this kind of an environment where pre-K to second grade don't have a computer and one in the household is not enough to serve all the kids in school? I don't know. I have no idea why or how a school district that is giving computers out to children in school think that one per household is going to suffice when there could be 3, 4, 5 children in that home who are all at different grade levels. That's going to be very difficult. And I'll tell you what's happening. Someone's on a tablet, if there is one. Someone is using their phone, their parent's phone, if there is one. And then someone else is using that one computer. It's a very challenging environment. I don't know how we solve it. The teachers online have to have a strict schedule, and the parents in that home have to have a strict schedule. And listen, let me just say this. Homework is everybody's business and everybody's responsibility. I know that you're a corporate executive, you're an attorney, you're a lawyer, whatever job you have. Homework is your responsibility. Gone are the days of your child, whatever age, coming home with their homework and you yelling out, make sure you get your homework done. Because in this classroom without walls experience, everybody in your house needs to be helping each other with homework. Group work galore for everybody. So I just wanted to put that out there. But that's my response to the one computer per household. There are lots and lots of learning tools. I've been sharing some on my DrCathyO page, lots of learning tools out there. So make sure when they're passing this computer around and taking turns that they're in a quality online environment where they are learning. Question from North Carolina. Parents continue to tell the children that schoolwork doesn't count. So you've learned the hard way you can't control what parents tell their children, whether it's sensible or asinine. So it's important that you make that child feel engaged and valuable when you show up on the screen. And you've got to make sure that students feel like they will really miss something when they're not there. And hey, lessen the focus on the grade and how many points they're going to get. I tell my students, everybody gets an A. Convince me that you shouldn't. And I just tend to teach from a positive rather than a deficit model. So you have to set up some kind of structure to get around that kind of thing. But if you make it interesting and engaging enough, students will want to participate. I got a question from Maryland. My children don't understand why they can't play with their friends when other children in the neighborhood are doing so. So this was another parent question. Let me tell you something you have to teach kids that my mother taught me when I was very, very young. How we do it in this house is how we do it in this house. So it's up in the air now, especially now that we have states opened up when people haven't still been tested and these states are going back to business as usual. That's another different session, but you have to do what works in your home, just like teachers have to do what works in their classroom. And you have to explain to your children what is really going on with this pandemic so that they understand why you have the rule that they only play in your backyard or your front yard, but they don't play with children down the street and they don't go and play with someone in another family. If that's your rule, that's your rule. But listen, the rules in this house are the rules in this house. That's a very important value to instill in children anyway. Last question that was written to me in advance, and we'll be shutting down here. How do we provide emotional support for high school kids, no prom, birthdays, senior trip? That kind of goes with what I said earlier about the freshman experience and how to support them at home. They're going to need a lot of learning help as well, but emotional support for your high school senior or your high school junior, you're going to have to plan for life after this. I think there will be glory after this. You just have to plan for glory after this. One of my really good friends had a beautiful wedding planned about 3 weeks ago. And of course, she had to postpone all of her events, but she didn't postpone the ceremony. So a year from now, on her first anniversary, she's going to have her same wonderful, beautiful wedding that she had planned in the dress she had planned to wear and everything. This time she wore a simplified dress, and so did her fiance, and they got married in the park with just a few, 3 or 4 friends standing in the distance. So same thing with emotional support for your high school students. You're going to have to make promises, and these are promises you will have to keep. Listen, lesson to parents, teachers too. Don't make promises to children that you can't keep. it stays with them forever. Keep your word. If ever it was the right time to learn word is bond, it's between you and your teenager or your children or your students. When you say this is what it is, that needs to be what it is. When you make a promise, a commitment to them, then you need to uphold it. So parents, I just think at this time, you have to make some promises to them to make up for what they may have missed during this year. So I'm scrolling through to see if there are any more questions in the chat box. Thank you all so much for joining. Here's a quick reminder. I'm going live on both my personal page, Cathy Owens-Oliver, and my business page, DrCathyO. If you're not following me on the DrCathyO page, please do. If you missed any of the Teachers Lounge sessions that we've had, then you can just go back and watch them on YouTube. Please send a link to your friends, your teacher friends, other educators, your principal, parents that you know who aren't getting with the program for Classroom Without Walls. Share this information with them as well. Thank you so much for joining. Write to me to give me your feedback, your questions, ideas, comments at info@drcathyo.com. My prayer for you is that you will be safe, you and your family, and healthy, and that this pandemic will be over really soon. Take care, everybody, and have a good evening.